welcome to the condo. I'm Susan and I'm so glad you stopped by. I hope everything is going well with everyone. It's Tuesday, I think it's April 20th. I never know the date. I just know it's Tuesday. But I thought I would do my spring book review, and I have 4 books to share. Maybe 5 because I can't remember if I shared another book, but they're all good books. So let's get started. The first book I'm going to share is Pamela Kelley's book. This is a series of, they're called the Beach Plum Cove Lane series. And the main character is Lisa. She owns a bed and breakfast in Nantucket. And this is book number 6. I think book number 7 is out. This one's titled Nantucket Threads. I think the number 7 is out and it's called Nantucket Hotel. It's a very light, easy read. It's a good series with, you get to know Lisa and her family. She has a son and 2 or 3 daughters, can't remember. And then the people that come in through the bed and breakfast, she befriends and they become friends. And that is how she met Lizzie, who opened a dress shop. So this is the story of Lizzie's life and, well, not her life, but a part of her life. She opens this dress shop on Nantucket. She happens to be pregnant. She's separated from her husband who was abusive, but there's another guy on Nantucket that really is fun. I can't remember his name. Her husband's name is Rick. There's another man on Nantucket that's very fond of her, but he knows her circumstances and her situation. He doesn't want her to go back to Rick because he was abusive, but she feels like she owes it to him to do that because of the baby. So it's all that drama that's going on in the book, as well as her opening this dress shop. So she gets a lot of advice from Lisa's daughters, and it's just a fun group of women to read about. It's a really good book. It's very easy to read. You could read it in a day. I think it's only, 215 pages. So there it is. Her covers are pretty too. Okay, the next book I read, and I haven't read anything by Danielle Steele in, I'm going to say, probably 15 years, maybe even longer. I read a lot long time ago, but then I kind of got tired of her and I didn't read anymore. But my neighbor gave me this book for my birthday, and the title of it is Neighbors. How fitting. My neighbor gave it to me. And it's very interesting. It has a little twist in it. The main character's name is Meredith, and she lives in a big old Victorian in San Francisco. And she was an actress. She was married to an actor, and she had 2 children, a daughter and a son. And they moved to San Francisco because they wanted their children to have, this Victorian is on a big piece of land. Hard to believe that in San Francisco, but it is. Anyway, their careers went in different directions, and they ended up, her and her husband ended up separating and divorcing. She kept the house, and her young son, went to stay with her husband one summer, and he drowned in a sailing accident. And her daughter, there was a big age gap between son and daughter. Her daughter had married and moved away. So Meredith became a recluse. Her acting career stopped. She just shut down and became a recluse. So she lived in this big Victorian, and she hired a husband and wife to be her caretakers of the house and of her. And they had a very checkered past that she didn't know about. And they learned to manipulate her and keep her. Anytime she would try to stretch out and go beyond the bounds of her house, they would pull her back and, no, you don't want to do that. You're going to be scared, da, da, da. So anyway, there was an earthquake in San Francisco, And she got to meet all the neighbors she had never met. And her house was not damaged very much because the way it was built, and her neighbors' houses were, so they came to stay with her, and she established a relationship with them and became very good friends. The caretakers didn't like it because they were bringing the outside world in, and you know, they were not so nice. They were skimming off the top and a lot of stuff going on there. And she met a man who was working with the earthquake, you know, going door to door to make sure everybody was okay. Anyway, it was a very good story, and it really made you think how easy it is to manipulate someone who is in the deep throes of depression. And she just gave all her trust to this couple, and they had bogus IDs and everything, so she never really, she did a check on them, but all their letters of reference were fake. But, and how they used her and manipulated her and how she caught on, it was a very good story. So it's called Neighbors. Now the next book, I don't know if you remember or if you watched my last review. I read a book called by this author, Emyl Jenkins, and the title of that book was Stealing with Style. Now it just so happens that this author, she's deceased now, lived in Richmond, Virginia. So the settings of her books are in Virginia. Now the other one was Virginia and New York, but this is solely in Virginia. And she is, Sterling Glass is the main character. She is an antiques appraiser, and she has been called in to appraise some items or at an oldest Virginia estate, and it had been robbed. And they wanted her to go in, appraise the items. Some of them were broken, and she was hired by the insurance company. So she goes into this house, which it has been turned over to a foundation for tours and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, the owners of this house died and left their estate to whatever. I don't think it was a historical society, but something similar to that. And so there were a lot of secrets behind the walls of this house. And as she is learning, as she gets in there and gets to know some of the people, she suspects some things are not right. There seems to be items that were not what they should be. They were fakes. They had been copied. And so the whole story revolves around the owner that built this mansion, how he bought items and had them replicated and sold them for more money because people thought they were buying the original. The thread weaves all around in there, but it's really good. Sterling Glass is an excellent detective, and she put all the strings to the story together. And there were a lot of suspicious people in this story, so she had to go through a lot of people to figure out who was behind it all. So that was good. And it's a shame because this author only wrote 2 books. She died in her 60s. I looked her up. Of a sudden illness, and she really in real life was an antiques appraiser. So each chapter she begins, it's really interesting, with a little article, like she was had a column in the newspaper, and people would write into the column, and it would say, "Dear Antiques Expert," and it would talk about this particular item in this column that somebody had written in, like, what do you think it's worth? You know, can you tell me if it's authentic? And that particular item that's in this column is woven into this chapter. So it was a very good book. I read it pretty fast. And I wish she had lived long enough to write more books, because they're really good. And for me, it's very interesting because it is in Virginia. Now, the cities she names are fictitious, but they're like, she talked about Petersburg and Norfolk. She did talk about that, but where the house is, I think, just based on what she said, is somewhere in Orange County in horse country. So it was very good. Now, on to the next one. This one my son gave me for my birthday. I have read all of Joel Rosenberg's books, and he's a wonderful, wonderful writer. And this particular series is called the Marcus Riker series. This is the 4th one in this series, and I think he'll only write 5 in the series, because he did another series, the John Bennett series, and there were only 5 in that. But it always, Marcus Riker, he was originally a Secret Service agent for the president, and then he moved on and he went to join the CIA, and his cover got blown, and then he was working under the title of Department of Homeland Security, I think, but he was really still CIA. It doesn't matter. But anyway, he is sent to Beirut because the president, in the last book, the president had brokered a peace agreement between Palestine, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, kind of like what's going on. It always parallels kind of the current events that are going on. So in this book, the president is going to over to the Middle East to sign the agreement. So Marcus Riker has gone over with the team to survey the land. So he was doing a security check along the border of Lebanon, and he got into some trouble. He always gets into trouble, and he gets the mud beat out of him, and I don't know how he survives. But anyway, his team, which was 3, was a woman and a young Israeli young man who had just joined the Israeli, whatever, I don't remember what it was, they're a Secret Service type thing, and then Marcus Riker. So he was kidnapped. His team, those 3 were kidnapped. So the story revolves around them being kidnapped, why they were kidnapped, who kidnapped them. It was somebody from Hezbollah, but it wasn't. It was somebody who had gone rogue. And Rosenberg always divides, I don't know if you can tell, he can't really, he divides his books up into 3 sections. So the first section, he kind of gives you kind of the background. So if you've not read any of his books, you can easily catch on. And he gives you a list of the cast of characters. But the first, each section is divided by a picture. And so the first section, he's kind of just laying the ground about the trip and why the trip was taking place. And during the first section, they do get captured. In the second section of the book, it's all that's going on behind the scenes to get them back and who really kidnapped them, because it wasn't really Hezbollah. It was this guy that had gone rogue, and he was actually trying to kidnap some Israeli soldiers and broker a deal for some money. And he did not know that this boy, who was the vice president's nephew or something, he didn't know this boy was an Israeli, because they were using fictitious names, and they all stuck to their story except for the lady, what their names were. So he assumed this boy was American because he had been schooled in New York, so he had an American accent. So they didn't know that he was an Israeli, because he would have gotten killed. But anyway, all that, a lot goes on in the book. It's hard to summarize it. But anyway, in the third section of the book, Marcus comes to the rescue, and he I hate to say, he wiggles his way. He always wiggles his way out of a situation, and it's how he did that, and how he and the others went in to rescue the two others that were captive, the lady and the boy, young man. And then the search to find out who the who was really behind the kidnapping. And I can't tell you anymore, but they were going to get a lot of money for these three people, and you know, it didn't end well for them. It ended well for Marcus, Riker, and his team, but for the kidnapper and his little team, not so well. So it was a very good book. And if you've ever read any book of his, he keeps you on the edge of your seat. Although this book, it was very good, and I'm glad I read it and everything, but some of them you just cannot put down. You just, but this one, I guess I know the rhythm of the books now, so it was easier for me to put down, but it was a really good book. And I thought I would show you the book I'm reading now. It's called The Sanatorium, and it is a Reese Witherspoon book. And I've never read any books by Sarah Paris. I guess is how you say her name. Not sure. She is an English. She's from Great Britain. But it's very, very interesting. And I'm only maybe 150 pages into it, but I'll do a review on this. And I think when you see a book that's been recommended by Reese Witherspoon, I haven't read a bad one yet. So this one really has some twists and turns, and keeps you reading. It's going to be interesting to see how it turns out. But if you'd like to pick up a book and read on it, and then we can compare notes after I finish reading it, we'll do that. And the other book that was my all-time favorite since Christmas was Kristen Hanna's book, The Four Winds. And I don't have the book because I loaned it to my neighbor. But if you haven't read it, please do. It's just really good. And I think I did a book review on it. It takes place during the Depression and the Dust Bowl, and the midsection of the country. The setting starts out in Oklahoma. So it was a very good book, very good. I mean, everything Kristen Hanna writes is good. So if you haven't read that, that's a good one. But that is all I have to share. It's getting to the time of the year that my favorite authors are coming out with new books. Patty Callahan Henry has a new book. Mary Alice Monroe has a book that'll be out sometime in May, the middle of May, I think, maybe the 1st of May. I believe Wendy Wax has got one coming out. I've got one on order from Amazon. I think it's hers. So it's getting to be that time of year when all my favorite low country authors are releasing their books. That'll kind of go along all summer long. So next book review should really be a good one, because you know I love my low country books. So I hope you all are having have a book you're reading and enjoying, and please share it with me. I get a lot of my subscribers that give me names of books to read, and I have a long list on my Amazon wish list of books to get, so I'll get to them all eventually. There's just not enough time in the day to read them all, but I do welcome recommendations. So I do thank you for stopping by, and my next video will be of the vintage market. So stay tuned for that, and until then, happy reading. Bye.